by alone inside. He's got the breakaway with the touch to the right. Goal! Everything you wanted from this debut. It's Brandon by taking a shot with the left. Goal! Isaac Friend from 25 yards out. The equalizer. Will Kidd with the touch of the goal. It's a go-ahead goal. Minneapolis City.
This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by Summit Brewing Company.
What is up, Buttercups? This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club. I am your COVID-less host, John, fresh off my negative test results, and joining me is my positive test result, the Nate Morales. Nate, dodged a bullet there, man. I'm feeling better. I still have a little bit of a cough and my allergy symptoms, but I'm okay. Are you ready for a better experience than me just hacking my way through that JJ interview last week?
That was brutal, man. I was really worried about you for a minute. But,
thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll tell you what, not the first negative test you've rejoiced in, I'm sure.
No, not definitely not. Yeah. just a regular on the Maury Povich show. I'm not the father.
We just have, this week's going to be great. Just a few housekeeping items to talk about, and then we're just going to dive right in. We want to kick this week off with a little MLS Is Back for now, I suppose, and then we're going to dive into our state's representative in that competition. Then I'm going to say, with so much, John, going on at City Intergalactic headquarters, we thought we got to go straight to the horse's mouth and get the straight bull, to mix metaphors. We are welcoming head coach Matt Van Benschoten to the show. So let's get this thing going, John. Let's party on.
All right, yeah, party we shall. Considering I'm negative, I'm all about partying right now. So, as most everyone knows, MLS is for sure back for now. And so far, once again, soccer shows the world that it can hold its return to play shit together with duct tape and maintain somewhat of a virusless experience, even if it kind of got off to that wobbly start with Nashville and then Dallas, and they had to send some of those kids home early from the playground. But I mean, it's not like the Major League Baseball, which is in full avalanche mode right now. Or the NBA within its first 7 days of the bubble experience. One guy just kind of walked off campus to hit up a Wingstop, and multiple Instagram models were posting screen caps of players texting them and inviting them inside the bubble to sneak in for some one-on-one, I guess you could call it.
John, it doesn't seem like that's the case, because nobody wants to fuck soccer players. So we are
apparently.
Right now, the tournament is in full knockout mode. Cinderellas are being crowned, and any team at any moment can melt down. So before we get to the Loons, have you been watching much of the tourney at all?
Honestly, you types of soccer, and I typically followed MLS, but not watched a ton of it. I watch more of it when the big five are done because the calendars don't sync up. But this is different for me. I found myself watching at least one game a night, maybe two. And for sure, I always catch or DVR the Revs and our guy Brandon By, as well as our local representatives.
Yeah, it's not really must-see TV for me, but I've been catching games when I can. And I've got a few impressions. I don't know about you, but I think this tournament is very MLS-y. A lot of bad mistakes, a lot of insane luck, games turning on a dime based on one guy just, shitting all over himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I am. My wife and I watched it was the Vancouver game where their second string goalie got his hand annihilated. Did you see that?
Yeah, didn't they have to play that? Was that their 17-year-old?
Then they played their 17-year-old.
Okay.
So the second string goalie went out, and it was awful. Like, his hand got stomped, and it did not look good. And he couldn't even open his goalie glove. They were going to cut it off. It was bad. The camera was thinking about cutting to him every once in a while, and then you could tell the producer was like, "Oh shit, never mind."
Fingers sticking out the wrong way.
Yeah, and then the 17-year-old came in, and he did pretty good. And then, God, he was just upside down, eventually losing in a penalty shootout because nobody on Vancouver is any good.
They
So
are.
he made a bunch of saves. He looked really good. So happy for him. Hopefully we get to see some of him during the season. And I think, John, my other early impression is LAFC is just going to run away with this
Yeah,
tournament.
and they don't even have Vela. Like
No,
it's crazy. Like Rossi, that guy's legit.
and he's been kind of quiet, and they're still crushing. Bradley Wright is about 10 years younger than he is.
Well, if you think Rossi's being quiet, didn't he score like 4 goals in a game?
Yeah, early on, you're right. He did.
Well, what I've noticed, which I'm quite fond of, as you know, is the wildly strong 50-50 challenges, and then some just straight up get stuck in tackles. I love that stuff. It seems like everyone's hyped up, and you can hear the camp. There's no fans, right? And even though they pipe in some noise, you can hear the guys like screaming for a call, and you can hear the tackles, which I kind of like. But in previous years, I thought MLS is a bit soft and tended to protect their DPs. But now it seems like everyone's a steak dinner, which is kind of cool. So I've also further confirmed for myself that this is still very much so a DP or a foreign player-driven league. Yeah, there's the occasional domestic star, but the heartbeats of pretty much every team were brought here on a visa. And however this tournament has, it's given its way to a lot of younger talents too that were draft picks or homegrown signings because of the sub rules being shifted and you having more opportunity to sub. But you got to see a decent amount of the future of the league when the group games were kind of winding down and teams were knocked out already, which is good to see, and the talent was skewing a little bit younger, and it's not half bad, which is for sure a bright spot.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. It's funny to see some of these, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids come in, and you never know who's going to be the next Jackson Ewell or Aronson or whoever, right? So it's going to be very cool to see who emerges from this tournament with, I guess, with the confidence to use their younger talent a little more often and rely on.
Like Lewis from San Jose, the winger. He looked really really dangerous. Yeah, it's been good. It's been nice to see some of the not so known names kind of pop up.
But let's talk about the Loons, John. How so far do you like what you see? Are we good?
I would say decent would be the best way for me to describe their performances so far. Nothing great, nothing awful. I shouldn't say nothing awful. Less awfulness. They still have their clear, what were you thinking moments when it comes to certain players on the field or decisions to play certain players. Like I don't need to name any names, but there's a certain winger out there that looks like he doesn't really give two shits at all. But things have been going well for them in tournament soccer. Sometimes pretty makes way for just enough will do it, which is kind of what our cousins across the river have been doing.
That's kind of the Minnesota United way, right? Enough will do it.
Right. Yeah. Just anything will do. From a player perspective, I'm just going to say this. Amaria is clearly hurt, or the injury he picked up warming up for the first match has kind of put him off of the trajectory and the excitement that a lot of fans were hoping for out of him when the season started. I mean, I was on that bandwagon too. I was like, man, this guy's legit. So it's a wonder to me why they're still trotting him out there when he looks completely off of his game and way out of sync with his running mates. But I guess you don't pay those type of guys the bench Nate. If they're able to go out there, I think you trot them out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been pleasantly surprised with Schoenfeld. Right, I thought like
for big celery.
Yeah, the big celery, is that what you just called him?
That's his nickname. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think for a third stringer, he's looking decent.
Well, he's supplanted a number 1 draft pick, which never should have been picked anyways, but that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, he's been good to see. I think the other thing for me is that Miller in goal scares me. He tunes out for large portions of matches. A lot of times he can catch a ball, but he parries it away or fists it away. Only to make like the spectacular happen when you least expect it. And coming off of what we saw with Minoni last year, he's clearly a downgrade in my opinion, and something that if this season does continue after the tournament is the type of play that he has from a netminder that you're going to see lose games for you. I know he's had some past issues on the mental side of the game, stemming from him being kind of toyed around with by the U.S. national team staff during his call up for the Gold Cup, where he didn't see any minutes and he was kind of just a throw along third string keeper that didn't see a lot of action. And you hate to see that kind of stuff. But for United fans, hopefully they can get him back to the pre-Gold Cup performances that he had, where he was really keeping LAFC in some games they shouldn't have been in, and ultimately turning the tide for them to win those games.
Yeah, it would, it'll be interesting to see on the other side of this tournament kind of how he does with Ike on the back line, because that's, I know, one thing that we're definitely missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and,
that's a big piece to miss.
Aha is fine, but he's no Ike Opara. So it feels good. It would feel good to have Ike back and organizing that back line, and we'll see if Miller looks a little more consistent. I agree.
Who's off of suspension is Brent Coleman.
He's been playing in the pool.
Yeah,
he's ready.
He's been on his unicorn floaty for a couple games. So lastly for me, Ethan Finley is clearly the Will Kidd of their team. And I'm sorry for Loons fans. I know he was born in Duluth, but he's
a Wisconsin guy.
He learned how to play soccer in Wisconsin. So stop claiming that he's from here.
No.
Before signing with United, the last time he probably spent in Minnesota was before he could walk. So let's just call a spade here. Anyhow,
I read on Wikipedia, like, they would drive from Marshfield or wherever he lived, like all the way to, was it Iowa or Chicago, so that he could play on a weekly basis.
He played. He did play on a team in Wisconsin. He played with the FC Nationals for a little bit, which was a high level club. But he quickly went to down to Chicago to play, I believe, for the Soccer's Magic at the time. But yeah, he kind of had that story that you hear, like Clint Dempsey driving 2 to 3 hours each way to go play high level soccer. But anyhow, his consistent on engine and his willingness to make that second, third, and even fourth run is seeing him get a ton of the ball. And he goes at defenders. He makes defenders make the mistake in the final third. He draws fouls deep in the offensive third, which is great to see, because United is fairly decent at set pieces. And he finishes most of his chances. And you really notice when he's not on the field, because the offense kind of goes flat. So I think he's been the big bright spot for me.
I like Ethan a lot. I think it's one of those things, sometimes you watch these games and you wonder what Heath is thinking with his rosters, and he's obviously playing mind games with the guys. So like when Finley's in, you're like, okay, this is the right thing to do. When Finley's out, you wonder what Heath is thinking, or what point he's trying to prove, because he's clearly the most dynamic player that the Loons have at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in form. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of what I mentioned. There's some decisions that are made where you're like, what were they thinking? But,
one last thing I want to bring up is watching a lot of these games and a lot of the commentary, kind of both halftime and in game. And I gotta wonder, like, is Taylor Twellman's job just to talk nonstop shit about everything that's going on in the field? Like, I've never seen a commentator talk so much shit about the product he is getting paid to hype up.
Well, everybody needs
whether
a
it's
villain.
going after the players, he goes after the teams,
the
he
league.
goes after the refs, the league. He is a total shit talker. Sometimes I like it, and sometimes I'm annoyed.
Well, like I said, everybody needs a villain. And I personally like him because, like you said, he's one of those guys that just says it like it is, and he's not afraid to go against the league, which pretty much everyone bends the knee for some reason. But with that said, he also, has to play the game a little bit to keep his job. And I think a lot of fans, think he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, but he has to. But I think he's doing fine. It makes me laugh every time he says things like, what was that guy thinking? Or like, what did he think he was hoping to do in that instance? When a guy totally makes a wrong decision. And those things make me laugh because I'm thinking it when I'm watching. So I like to hear the commentators say that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. Well, we've basically known there's not going to be summer soccer for our beloved Crows for a little bit now, but training has definitely returned with, of course, all the safety precautions in place. And the Brotherhood is out in full force, tuning up for maybe any chance that there might be coming up in the fall to roll that ball out wherever and whenever that could be. So it's definitely been a hot minute since we've had our fearless leader on. So we would like to welcome everyone's favorite head coach to the show, Matt Van Benschoten. Matt, how are you doing, my friend? It's been quite some time since we've been able to speak to you on this here podcast.
It has been. It's great to be back with you guys. I don't know if I'm everybody's favorite head coach, but I'll take that vernacular for sure.
Yeah.
So Matt, most people around our circle, they know that you're a full-time soccer coach and you have multiple irons in the soccer fire around the cities. Outside of stating the obvious, tell us how the Rona impacted you and what has changed for you as a coach coming out of it, with it basically greatly impacting and putting handcuffs on how you do your job.
Yeah, it was interesting. We didn't even know if we were going to be able to get out to coach or play soccer in any capacity, whether it was city or club or whatever. So we finally were able to, at least for the club stuff, able to get back on the field. I think it was middle of June. For the first 2 weeks, we had to practicing. And so what that meant for us as coaches was every player had to be in a 10 by 10 box. They could only have their soccer ball. They couldn't travel to other boxes. And we as coaches were supposed to provide some sort of programming with them for, an hour to an hour and a half. And try to do soccer stuff and with 10, 11-year-olds who clearly, I don't know if you've met children, are not good at listening to directions or not, and they're not for sure not good at not touching each other. So I'll be really honest, the first kind of couple weeks definitely sucked, but we survived, so here we are.
So we've returned to play, and there, without returning to play, there's less of a reason for us to speak to you since the season was killed. But yesterday I was able to make it out to training, and I saw a lot of smiles, and it wasn't just because Uncle Biz showed up with a few beers.
Although that was part of it.
That was part of it, yeah. But I definitely shared a few with both the Hutton brothers. Well, what have the players said to you or mentioned about the return?
They enjoy it. They really do. And I think it's partly, obviously the big reason is they're just back on the field. I know these guys have been cooped up, for 3-4 months, not playing. It's been really tough because they're soccer guys. Like, this is their life. This is what they want to do all the time. And to not be able to do it is tough. So yeah, I smiles, joy. I think that's really, the way they've really enjoyed, I think, the first couple of weeks of training. And, when the coaching staff and myself were talking about how we want to structure practices, we just said, you know what, we have no idea what shape these guys are in. We have no idea how many guys we're going to get on a nightly basis. Let's just try to keep this relatively simple. Let's put them in an environment where they can actually, just compete and thrive. And they've done that. And resoundingly, I keep hearing from guys like, man, training was awesome. I love it. I love that game. So, I think we're doing something right on that aspect. And I don't think it's just the fact that they've been starved for soccer for the last 4 months, but overall it's been really good.
Yeah. So another thing training gets you to do is kind of pilot this futures 7v7 model, right? With the NPSL and the UPSL squads. And of course it's a ton of fun for them.
Absolutely.
What really is exciting you so far about what you're seeing out of the practice of this model? And have you already identified any kinks that maybe you're going to want to work out ahead of the futures taking it up full time?
Yeah, it's for sure. There's definitely been a couple things I think that just even the first couple of practices we've noticed and really are thinking about how do we tailor this to make it even better. I think I kind of alluded to it with just the competition piece. Players love to compete, and it's amazing when you put them in an environment where all of a sudden you put a scoring system and there's an objective to win a game. It changes everything. It changes the intensity. It changes the mentality. And so I think as we get into the future thing, that's definitely something we want to be cognizant of is how do we get the most out of players by putting them in an environment where they're giving their best because they want to win. And so I think that's a big thing. And then I think too, the numbers can always be tricky. And I think that's one of the things that we've, in the last couple of years have really hammered down just guys, hey, you're responsible for letting us know your availability and making sure you're there. And so, if the numbers aren't, as a coach, you always have to be flexible things as they come up and, guys show up, drop last minute. So you have to be flexible. But I think the key for that is, with the futures thing, we really have to have an idea, with these teams, we have to provide the best training possible. And a big piece of that is going to be making sure we nail down numbers, because if we're scrambling 2 minutes before practice to try to put sessions together for these guys, then the quality is going to drop. So that's just one of the realities. I think that, it's going to we'll cross that bridge as we come to it. But if we can get on top of that, I'm really excited for what the futures holds.
So college soccer, for the most part, is kind of cascading towards a full cancel for this fall season. So we're getting more time with the younger guys, which I think is great.
It's awesome.
But this could be a lost year for some of our veteran players that I think are kind of in their prime. A guy like Nick Hutton comes to mind. What have you said to the older fellas to keep them engaged when they're maybe more so now than ever, less focused on soccer and maybe more on their families and their day jobs?
Yeah, good question. I haven't said anything specifically to them yet. I think what's interesting, you watch the trajectory of guys as they get older and the years kind of pass in the city program. And the guys who last, like you look at the Charlie Adams, you look at the Abdallah Baz, you look at the Matt Elders, is they really are able to kind of find that healthy balance between life and work and soccer. And first 2 weeks into the sessions, they just really enjoyed getting out there. And, anytime they've been more than happy to find either the time off work or, whether it's the Huttons, maybe get away from the kids for a little bit. They've really enjoyed it. But again, I think the reason they're still here is because they've been able to manage that well, where, other players in the past, like, sometimes work just takes precedent. Sometimes family just takes precedent. Mm-hmm. And so I think for players who are able to navigate that piece, like they're going to be pretty successful with it. And then in terms of, the last season, it's one of those things I feel a lot more for the college players, because there's a lot more unknowns with that. And you do have a certain number of years for eligibility. Whereas, some of these older guys, like, if you're in shape and you're staying with it, like city's going to provide you a continued platform to be able to play and, play soccer at a high level. So honestly, I'm not super concerned about the older guys, so long as they're figuring out that balance and they're taking care of themselves, which again, the guys we have do a spectacular job of that. So we'll just kind of continue to see what happens.
So I mentioned the younger guys that were in our program are back because of the college piece being canceled, but I did notice quite a few sets of Minnesota United training gear on a few guys yesterday.
There was a couple
that looked hardly old enough to drive a vehicle. What's up with that?
So it's really interesting, and we've talked about it ad nauseum in a lot of ways with Minnesota United folding announced the futures, and just kind of being in the soccer scene. I know a lot of players who have been in the DA, and a couple just have reached out, and as you know, word travels fast in the soccer community, and so we've had a few players that have reached out and just wanted to come be a part of something, because they're in that same boat with a lot of like our players. They're just not playing soccer, and I think the hard part for them was they could go back to their clubs and play, but the club soccer isn't actually going to start again until the fall. And it's actually, for those older players, it's not actually going to start again until after the fall season and winter, because most of those kids play high school. So for a lot of these players, they literally are sitting there doing nothing. And so, as soon as they hear there's high level soccer and they want to get to be a part of it and play against, older college ex-pro players, they're all for it. And it's been great. And it's been really cool too, to see at least a handful of guys that we have, like, they're absolutely able to hold their own. I give our veterans a ton of credit, because they welcome them and just kind of get them acclimated. And, it's just kind of what I love about the brotherhood is it's like, hey, you're good at soccer, you want to come hang out, let's do it. So it's been really cool. And it's been fun to see some of those young faces, and hopefully it's kind of a long play for the future where, depending on what happens, they come back and maybe one day they put on a Crows jersey.
So last question for me before I let Nate talk, since we both are responsible for the show. So
unlike last week.
Yeah, unlike last week when I was just dying of whatever I had. So I have to ask, because even though we've talked about this as a staff internally, who are the guys that are standing out, since the restart, whether they're new players, young players, old players? Who makes you feel like a lightning bolt grazed the tip of your penis so far?
What? Whoa.
Wow. That's I don't know if I can answer that without getting in a lot of trouble. But, I'll do my best. I got to start with just Max Stiegler. Like the guy is just so good at what he does. And I was talking to Adam today because we're talking about a few different players. And the thing with Max is like he's not a flashy player. He just does everything so well, so consistently that it's just fun to watch him. And he's a catalyst to so many other things. So that's fun. Another player that's kind of showed up really in shape, unbelievable shape, is Samuel. And part of that is because he's been hanging out with Jonah all summer, and Jonah's a guy who's a little bit of a fitness nut. Man, Samuel is jacked. Like he came in, and I was like, whoa, like that's not the way I went for being in shape after college. I went the opposite way, and he's doing something right. So that's been good. And then a couple new faces, not new faces necessarily, but guys who kind of haven't been with us for the last couple of years. One is Bernard Asabi Rule, who was on our MC2 team or U23 team a couple years ago. Great kid, grew up here, played at St. Paul Blackhawks. He's now plays at UW Green Bay and has spent the last couple seasons at AFC or AHC down in Houston, which is USL2 team. And man, he's always been kind of a skinnier guy, but he showed up and he's another dude that you're like, whoa, you grew up fast, and he's just big, powerful, body guys. And then another new guy that has kind of been around the fringes, and we've loved having, is a guy by the name of Joey Tawa, who I actually don't know his background here, but he's recently been part of Columbus Crew's DA. I think right before COVID happened, he even got in a couple scrimmages with their first team. And another just big, tackles hard. It's funny, you watch guys go against him and you can tell they're not as keen to go into tackles hard because they know that Joey's going to crush them. So it's fun. There's a lot of talent and some new faces and some newer old faces as well, which is awesome.
All right, so you've got to keep your eye on a lot of guys. Talk about having to keep your head on a swivel. That's a lot of players to keep tabs on.
Yeah, it is. But I think actually one of the silver linings of COVID for us was we were actually able to be really more intentional with kind of coach and staff development. And so over the course of COVID or in lockdown, we would get together on Wednesday nights and just kind of go over game film and talk to coaches. And I think, what for Adam and I is we kind of looked at this and said, yeah, we're going to grow. We've got NPSL, which is a lot of guys. We've got Minneapolis City 2. We've now got this Futures. Like we've got a lot more guys. There's no way that we can continue to kind of tackle this just by ourselves. So we have to find the right people to be a part of this. And then secondly, with those people, continue to help kind of guide them and give them opportunities to be successful. And at some point, really, like I said, just empower them, because they've got to be the ones who kind of, take charge and manage some of this stuff. Because there's, like you said, I think once we get the Futures program going, we may have upwards of 75 to 100 guys just under the Minneapolis City umbrella.
That's a ton, man. So John touched on it a little bit earlier, but colleges and universities are really dealing with this potential return to school in really different ways, and nothing's super consistent and nothing is set in stone yet. I know Carleton is not going to be bringing any upperclassmen back, right? It's just all, freshmen and foreign exchange students. The U is doing 70% online classes. Every other school is doing something different, and that's going to mean a lot of guys might just not go back to school. Yeah. Right. And that means to their soccer programs. Have you talked to their coaches at all? Does this mean you might have free reign to facilitate what's going to amount to a very extended off-season training for these college age pros?
A little bit. I've talked with coaches a little bit, not necessarily in that capacity, but just in terms of kind of what's happening with them. And obviously the the thing that sucks with COVID is it's a lot of this is so much of a waiting game and seeing how things progress.
Yeah.
So we've kind of just been intentional on, just kind of easing back, seeing what the landscape looks like, and then, depending on what continues to happen and evolve here, to then maybe start to work with some of these either college coaches, whether, if they're able to get into training camp, maybe we end up doing, kind of a scrimmage circuit against a lot of the local MIAC teams or UMAC teams. If they're not able to do stuff, then it might be, just maybe adding a couple more trainings for guys who are, maybe not necessarily ready for City now, but are some of the better players from some of these other colleges. So it's, because the whole point for City is, hey, we're here to try to make the Minnesota soccer community better. That includes college age guys, and with them kind of being in limbo, the nice thing with us is we have some flexibility, and we're clearly not this moment competing for anything. So it's not like we have to build in a lot of tactical stuff and be really mindful about who we have on the field training with us. So it's kind of nice. We're just going to say, hey, yeah, we've got the space, we've got the coaching staff. Hey, come be a part of it. We're going to set up a session that's really pretty simple, and you guys just compete, and it's worked out pretty well.
Sure. So, I mean, as a follow-up to this, that might mean that Minneapolis City has the longest, most consistently rostered, and probably most comprehensive training schedule leading up to any U.S. Open Cup shenanigans, or at least the 2021 soccer schedule. How are you approaching that? And besides the obvious, how can Minneapolis City really take advantage of being together, training, and bonding for so long?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have no idea with the U.S. Open Cup. I mean, I'm until it happens, I'm just under the impression we are perpetually never going to play. But,
it's fake.
It's
fake.
It's so fake news. But no, your question about just the kind of extended preseason for us has been really great. And one of the biggest things I was disappointed with COVID was we had spent so much time building for the U.S. Open Cup, really putting in the work just tactically with the players. And the even better part was the fact that our captains, Max and Ao, were going out on their own, finding space to do winter training with some of these guys for a really, really reduced cost. And it wasn't like it was close. It was, for a lot of guys, they were traveling 1 hour both ways, so a 2-hour commute just to go be part of this for an hour and a half. And so to me, that was the most disappointing thing, because soccer things aside, to see our guys kind of and really be invested about, hey, we want to get better. This isn't just about, hanging out and, playing, whoever in the NPSL. Hey, we want to make a run in the U.S. Open Cup. We're committed to doing that. And then, to put that work in and even have our guys do it on their own volition, to then all of a sudden have it taken away just really sucks. So I'm really excited, at least for where we're at with this piece, is just to be able to start to build towards that even now, because we typically don't even get started until, February or March. And so if this is something we can continue, is even better.
So last question. Corona has definitely given all of us a lot of extra time to think and a lot of extra time to drink. When you don't have to commute, you can sleep in a little longer. You can have that extra whiskey or that extra beer. And I'm wondering, what's your new jam? What are you falling into in this time of social distancing that you can recommend to the people out there?
Man,
I know you're a whiskey guy too, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really apropos that you asked, because I was just telling somebody about this the other day that since my in-laws have a brewery, fun fact, I'm kind of always been more of a beer guy, but whiskey's kind of always been there. So
shit, that's right. You're at the brewery right now, aren't
I'm
you?
literally at the brewery right now, trying to get drunk people out of here. So I really hope this doesn't come through on the podcast, but it might. That's okay. But no. So my wife has always really been into Two Gingers. I started drinking that, and then just by pure happenstance, we did Hy-Vee Isles Online, and I think it's like Tropicana.
Old Granddad?
not Old Granddad, classic, but no. There was it was like Tropicana, like strawberry peach juice that we accidentally somehow got, and it's the best shit ever. And I mixed that with Jameson, put a little bit of Sprite, maybe a little bit of the cherry amaretto stuff in there, and it is phenomenal. So that is my go-to right now. Would highly recommend it. I'll put the recipe together and put it out on Twitter so people can enjoy.
Did not see that coming.
I didn't either, but hey, when Corona hands you lemons, you make peach, strawberry, amaretto, 2 gingers.
You gotta give it a name.
It is. It's very highbrow.
Kind of a tiki cocktail you got going on there.
For sure.
That's nice. I like that. I'm right now enjoying. I got into Du Nord Distillery, which is kind of over by my house, but when I first went there, when we first moved in the neighborhood, all they did was vodka and gin.
Okay.
And now they've got this mixed blood blended whiskey.
Ooh.
He was starting to make it right when I moved in about 6 years ago, and now it's ready and it's being bottled, and it is delicious. It's just a good, you can rip off 2-3 Manhattans, with this stuff. It's nice 80 proof, real smooth. I'm into it.
Dude, I love that. I may have to go check that out.
Yeah, again, two local whiskeys there, 2 gingers and the Du Nord mixed blood.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'll throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah, please do.
I'm pretty standard on Old Granddad, but
that's because you are kind of an old granddad.
Kind of, yeah. I've been dipping into Newcastle lately.
Yes.
And we had a couple last night after training, and I hadn't had one in like 6 years, and I got a 6-pack of it, and the 6-pack turned into a 12-pack, and now it's in my fridge.
I love it, dude. I'm coming over.
That's crazy.
Yeah, who knew? Old friends, Newcastle.
Old friends, Newcastle.
Well, Matt, you've been on the show. We've had a couple games over the last 4 years of the show. I think you might have, we've played word association games. We played, I'm not sure which one you played. Probably that word association
I think I did word association, maybe speed round.
Yeah, speed round.
Would you rathers?
Yeah. This newest game though is one we like to call Ask John Anything. I don't know if you've been listening to the podcast at all lately, but John is terrified. John is terrified of this, of you specifically.
Yeah.
Really, this is how it's going to work.
Okay.
You can ask John 2 questions about anything you want. And if John answers both of them, the game is over. But if he pleads the 5th on any question, he has to answer your next one. The other, of course, the implied thing here is that he has to answer them truthfully.
Sure.
So he's sworn to truth, and he has to answer them both. If he pleads the 5th, the next one is a for sure answer.
Okay. All right.
I'm raising my right hand and putting my left hand down on a bottle of Old Granddad to know that I'm serious about answering these questions.
All right. I'm going to start with an easy one, and then I'm going to hit you hopefully with a little bit harder one.
Okay.
So I'm going to try to lull you into a false sense of security.
Well, now you told me, so that's not going to work.
Well, that's fun. All right. So first question, what is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, I think it's going to sound totally vain, but irrelevance.
Sure.
And what I mean by irrelevance is that, like, I too have a lot of stakes in the fire, whether it be family, soccer, work. I like to make sure that I'm relevant and that I'm contributing, because when you become irrelevant, or you force relevancy to a point where you're irrelevant, then you lose credibility. And I think credibility is the number one thing that people need to have. So I would say irrelevance.
That's a good answer. I like that.
Thank you. I try.
You do. So you don't become irrelevant.
Yeah. And I mean, even when I was playing soccer, I wanted to make sure I was always relevant, so I had a place in the squad.
Absolutely. It's important. All right. Question number 2.
Oh, God.
All right. How many people have you slept with in your life?
We talked about this. Stiggy asked me the same
question.
Damn it!
Stiggy asked body count already.
Well, okay, so I've already answered this question. We've never come across this before, Nate. So we can give maybe Matt another chance at a different question.
Okay.
Or I can make it boring and say the same answer.
Can I get? I would like to request a different question.
Redo. We'll do a
Okay.
redo.
Yeah, we'll do a redo. You get one redo, and then the game's over.
That's fine.
New rule.
Since we are on the topic of sexual experiences, I would like to know what your first sexual experience was like, and how old were you when it occurred?
Okay.
And I would prefer if it was more awkward. I think the listenership would like to know that.
Yeah. Okay. It was extremely awkward.
Yes.
We'll start there. So I was 17, and I was on a soccer trip to Europe with my club squad, and it was also the first time that I was actually ever like in a bar setting where I didn't have a fake ID and I had to be kind of a wallflower to not get in trouble. So we were at a pub in Munich and just started chatting up some local ladies, and they found out we were Americans and they loved that. And then I went to the bathroom and I came back, and the only one left was the oldest one of the group, and
Nice.
she happened to probably be maybe like 27, 28.
Dude.
So
Pretty old when you're 17.
pretty old when you're 17. And here's where the awkwardness comes in. I clearly, being the first time out of the gate here, had no idea what I was doing outside of the obvious things. So it was very much so a learning experience for me, and being told to do things in a different language that I spoke decently, but I didn't speak fluently. So that made it.
Dad never said that kind of thing around the house. I'll tell you what.
Yeah. Didn't learn that in book German. Yeah, there you go. That was experience number one.
Nice.
That was good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Embarrassing.
You know what? I didn't get to a third question, but I got what I wanted at a question too. So
Okay, good.
yeah.
Now I'm fairly embarrassed, but I will say though that although it was awkward, as most initial experiences in that world are for people, I was very relevant in the situation. So, we'll end on that note. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to see you in the flesh last night and
You
see
as
the
well.
horses run, as I say. Typically we get sick of each other by this point in the summer because we see each other all the time and talk, but we'll be back together more so sooner rather than later. So stay negative, my friend.
Thank you. You as well, both of you. Thanks for having me on.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks,
Matt.
man. We'll talk to you later. That is all for this week's show. Thank you, as always, to our show sponsor, Summit Brewing Company. It's boating weather, and what better way to enjoy your local regatta than a can of ice cold beer? Our pals at Summit have something for all the taste buds, all the buds, that pairs well with whatever situation you want to get yourself into. So get to stores today and fill your fridge up, or your cooler if you're on that regatta, with some goodness. Summit, a more meaningful brew since 1986. If giving back to the community means a lot to you, maybe it's time to give to the club that gives back. Minneapolis City is a 501c3 that provides a safe, reliable, and fun environment for young people to play the beautiful game. As well as our newly formed Futures Program, Scholarship Fund. Consider a tax-deductible donation to a truly city-focused organization. Do you have anything you want us to cover? Any questions you have you want us to go over? Send us mail. It's easy. Hit us up on Twitter at The People's Pitch or through email, mcscpodcast@gmail.com. And if calling's more your speed and you want to hear your voice live on the show, we're going to have to probably do a cattle call for that soon, Nate. Some people.
Yeah, we got to remind people that on the Twitter, nobody ever makes it to this part of the show, so I'm sure they don't.
They're already passed out, or they're super randy from my first ever sexual experience conversation. Anyways,
I'm gonna be thinking about it all night.
I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less. So anyways, our show hotline is 612-460-5683. Again, that's 612-460-5683. All questions, comments, and concerns are welcome. And finally, as always, you can complain to the club at MPLS City SC. That does it for this week's show. I am John. That was Minneapolis City head coach Matt Van Benskoten. And of course, that was Nate. Until next time, friends, you got hope.
Poster burning maple weeds, cradle major keys. Thinking back, I've been major since the minor league. So supreme, too much sauce off my olive NMDs. I could staple steez, bend the goat so I get the cheese, never fall. Rake them leaves and make sure every moment gets seized and everything I see.